Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Healing and Freedom Journey. Mark DeJesus here, your brother from another mother, bringing you insights along this journey. I'm all about mental, emotional, and relationship health, and if you are too, then you have come to a great place. It's good to be back, albeit a little bit congested, but that's okay. I am honored to be able to share some insights that can be a help to you and the things that you're working through in your life. There are a number of people that write to me and so kindly say, I relate to your journey. I relate to what you've gone through, what you've been through, what you're working through. And it's an honor to be able to share the things that I share. And what I thought about today to bring to you is, well, in my journey, and of course, what I share is things that I found to be helpful for me and for those I've had the honor to be able to help. And what I thought would be helpful today is to share with you 3 areas that I focus on for my mental health. And as I had some time over the past few weeks to do some reflecting, I was thinking about what are the things that I want to continue in my life and in my journey to carry into this new year, into this new season, and to continually carry in my life. And the statement I'm going to give you, the phrase I'm going to give you, breaks down into 3 areas that are really the focus. Now, in some past videos recently, I talked about some things I stopped doing or some things I had to get breakthrough, get freedom from. Some chains that had to be loose, some things I had to learn to let go of, some things I had to learn how to overcome and continue to learn how to overcome. But as you're letting go of stuff and shedding off stuff and having a breakthrough, what is it that you focus on? What's the focus of your day? And I've learned firsthand what we focus on is what will grow in our life. And so I have learned day in and day out what's going to be the focus of my day and my journey. And another way that I can put this is what's going to be the narrative. Because when you have a focus, the things you focus on, how your life's going or what God is doing or what you sense you're learning in your life, then you tend to pick up on anything related to that. It creates a bias that you, and so, for example, if you feel like you always get the short end of the stick and you always are ignored, you will look out for that, but you won't actually take in where you are being listened to, where you are being noticed. So it's something about focus that's very, very powerful. And I'm learning day in and day out to just how to capture focus in a healthy way. Now, as someone who's had to walk a healing and freedom journey from obsession and compulsion and lots of anxiety, the focus has been hijacked, where it's been a constant anxiety and fear focus and obsession around an issue. So when I'm talking about focus, I'm not talking about obsession. One of the big things that I actually had to learn was to bring the focus back. I need to be able to see the big picture because our battlegrounds don't let us see the big picture. And how can I align my focus in a way that is going to be more fruitful for the long term in my life and in my journey? So I'm going to give you these 3 things that I focus on. This is what I meditate on, I ponder, I use in my journaling time, and how I respond to situations of what's going on inside and how I respond to what's going on in life around me. Okay, so what I'm going to share with you really is focused on my internal thought world and how I process thoughts and how I'm learning to navigate a healthier mental health journey. But it also reflects on how I relate to you, how I relate to the world around me, how I relate in the world as I see it, as I'm processing perspectives and emotions and things like that. And it really comes down to a phrase. This 3-pronged focus comes down to a phrase that my desire is that I want to live as a compassionate witness of grace. And where I'm going to take these words will have some interesting trails in how I process them and how they activate in my life. A compassionate witness of grace. Now, I first want to say this wasn't my default setting. I lived as a harsh, critical, judgmental, witness of condemnation. I beat myself up, and then I would condemn at the end and give myself a sentence, and I'd cycle in that accusation over and over again. So a lot of what I'm sharing here is changing how I relate to myself and seeing that God relates to me through his compassion and his grace is flowing in my life. And as I learned to be a compassionate witness of grace, it's fundamentally changed how I relate to my thoughts, what thoughts I pay attention to, what thoughts I just let float on by, and even how I react to thoughts that in the past would get me all stirred up, or I would be spiraling, or I feel like I got to do something to fix, or I'd react to people or react to situations. These three words have actually calmed and nurtured the waters in my life and allowed me to walk more in the fruit of the Spirit, less compulsive, less from a sense of pressure, less catastrophizing, less urgency, less living out of fear, less living out of panic. So let's look at the first part of this, and that's the compassionate part, learning to live as a compassionate witness. Whenever we're looking at mental health, we have to always start with love. Everything starts and ends with love and is surrounded with love. Without love, every subject we could think of is out of context. Love takes every thought, every situation, every scenario, and puts it into perspective. God doesn't just have love, he is love, and he relates to you compassionately. And so with the focus, when compassion comes in, the focus gets adjusted to its proper perspective. And the focus becomes love and living in love. So we start to ask ourselves, what does love look like in this situation? And there's three aspects to love that I teach continually, that I apply in my daily life. Because the first thing that love does is it brings about relational acceptance. Now, for Christians, this statement or this word acceptance can get confusing, right? Because we can think, when you talk about acceptance or self-acceptance or relational acceptance, then we're compromising sin, and we're not saying sin is sin. No, sin is sin. But God, in his love, receives us and brings us in, not because we are sinless, but even in our sin, made it possible for us to draw near to him. It's the beauty of Jesus Christ and the work of grace, which I'll get to in just a second, that brings this relational connection there. Now, for many of us, we skip past that. And we go to, I got to fix this problem, I got to fix this thing, I got to fix. And what we're doing is we're constantly avoiding love. And most of my life, I avoided love. I thought I knew what love was. I thought I knew God loved me, but I was actually avoiding it. And I was living a life of always trying to fix and always trying to strive and always trying to, all these things and the drama that was going on in my mind and my thinking. And I learned I didn't know how to be loved in the midst of seeing my struggle, my sin, strongholds, battles, weaknesses, whatever, any of those things. I would be focused on fix. And it was avoiding relationship with God. And then I was trying to fix myself from a distance. Now, hoping if I fix myself, then I'll get closer to God because I want to be close to him. So let me get all these things right. Then I would be distant from myself. I would see myself with contempt and self-hate, and I would be divided in myself to myself, which many people in their mental health battle, they are a house divided. They're divided against themselves. So in their battle, they turn in hostility rather than turning in love. Compassion sets the tone for relationship to draw near, towards, not away. God is moving towards you right where you are right now. And accepting that, you turn towards yourself, not away. And in relationship, you learn how to move towards and learn how to practice love as you interact with others. So there's this acceptance. The picture that the scriptures give is in the Greek word agape or agapeo, if I can get that word out right, speaks of welcoming you into a feast or bringing you into, you're invited in. And this is the invitation of God, is that you're invited in. Well, I had to learn to say yes and amen to that. learn to receive his love, and also say yes and amen to his love for me as I relate to myself. So before we even talk about your thoughts and your emotions, it's a response with love. I'm having a bad day. It's okay. Oh, I'm having this struggle. Okay. We're in a relationship. It's not because you have a struggle now relationship's removed. And so I had a lot of relearning to do. Love first. And love says relationship. And I had to practice that and learn to be loved and see what it's like to live in that love. And part of that was learning how to connect to God's love for me as a father, which is in a lot of my material. You can find it in my book and my topics page. And also God loves me and I love myself. There is aspects of the three-pronged approach of God's love and in my material, the heart healing journey. So those are plenty of areas that discuss it further. But in this loving acceptance and relational inviting in, then we see Paul say love is patient and love is kind. And patience says it'll take as long as it takes. So I want you all to know that I am not in a hurry to get somewhere in my mental health. So if I'm having a bad day or a difficult week, or whatever it is, I'm not in a hurry, because that hurriedness is actually anti-productive for healing and anti-productive for overcoming. And for many of you, your hurried journey is working against you because you live in a hurried world that's trying to rush your healing, rush for quick fixes. Love slows things down. We're going to be patient. Now, there's a lot of self-hate and angst we have inside and irritability that fights that. We get impatient with ourselves in our journey. And what we actually lose is we lose sight of one step at a time, because we're lost in our fussing. And not only is love patient, but love is kind. And that showed me the narrative that I need to be tuning into. Because all of you are listening to a narrator throughout your day of how you respond to your day, how you think your life is going. When we tune into God's love and his compassion, we tune in to what love says, and it is kind. God can speak and be and relate right to you in the midst of whatever kind of swamp you're in, and still remain in his kindness. I'm so thankful that in my messiest of days, he was still kind to me. I'm very grateful for that. I'm so grateful that in my mess, he wasn't thrown by it, and he's kind and he's faithful in his kindness. So I'll never be the same again as I've learned to live in the power of what compassion does. So now I'm cultivating this in my life. As I'm cultivating this, what are people going to receive as I interact with them? Because now this is my focus. I see their pain. I see what they're going through. And now compassion in these areas is leading the way. And in fact, loving acceptance has been so powerful in my life because now I can notice what people go through, because I was obsessed with fixing myself. And then when other people, if they had drama or if they had stuff going on, it always made me feel like I got to fix them. I got to do something, or I got to be a better Christian, or I was always driven compulsively to have to respond in all these ways. But now as I'm cultivating this within my own heart, I'm less and less having to react to fix people, but actually more to love people. And in that, guess what? God's power shows up. God's transformative power shows up more in me just focusing on love than when I focused on the fixing. Isn't that interesting? Focus on the fixing got shallow results, got legalistic stuff, didn't bring about long-term change. But operating and knowing how to relate in love. And so you're going to have to learn in your walk, in your journey, what it means to receive his love. We love him because he first loved us. And you're also going to have to learn to start reacting to what you're going through with a loving perspective. It's going to tune you into compassion. To be a compassionate witness. I was an unloving witness to myself. But when I'm a compassionate witness, I start to live more gentle. I'm gently noticing and observing. And so now in my thought life, as I've grown in this is taking practice of seeing a thought, but I don't have to react to it. So the process of noticing and observing, you might see a thought come through. Oh, look at that crazy thought or this thing wanting to pull me. Oh, I feel the emotion of it, right? We're so reactive to things. And that I've learned to be a witness. Now, I'm not using this word witness like in the Bible, Acts 1:8, you shall be witnesses. I'm using it in the term of just observing and noticing. I was not an observer and a noticer of what's going on inside. I was one who was introspective and intensely obsessing over what's going on inside of me. That's not healthy. That's not going to help. So compassion helped me to bring a more gentle response. And in that, now I'm noticing, observing, okay, I've got these thoughts coming through, and I don't catastrophize. When love has a work, we slow down the catastrophizing. Because when you catastrophize, you're not sober. You're overreacting. You're not seeing things as they are. You're seeing them worse than they are. So it doesn't let you take the steps you need to take because you're now lost in overreacting. And in mental health world, there's a lot of neuroticism. Hey, it's okay. It's okay. Oh, I'm neurotic. It's all right. I'm okay recognizing I've seen neuroticism in my life and seen catastrophizing in my life, seeing despair in my life, overreacting, but learning to see my thoughts in a different perspective. Because I would think every thought that flew by was my thought. It originated from me, and I need to investigate it, interrogate it, and I exhausted myself. And then if that lie didn't work, then it was like, this is God speaking to me. And what I noticed is I wasn't witnessing my thoughts. I was immersed in them. Do you find yourself immersed in what your thoughts say and just reacting to them every time? So now the thoughts that fly through become your boss, and they lord over you, and they become dictators to you. And so the practice was I can have any kind of thought show up that's in existence. I don't have to react to it. I don't have to interrogate it. I don't have to answer with a reply to every thought that flies through. And as I say here in this list that you see if you're watching the video, is that I don't have to always be fixing. You see, even when the Bible talks about taking thoughts captive and that process, and I teach that in other videos about what that looks like in a relational way, right? And many people think that means every thought that flies through, they got to interrogate it, where it came from, and they've got to argue back with it, and they've got to debate back, and they create a whirlwind, a tornado of chaos within inside of them, instead of learning to develop our confidence in knowing, I don't have to entertain that thought. I don't have to listen to it. I may feel it. It may be creating a storm in me, but I don't have to feed the storm. And so there's a practice I've learned. I practice doing this in my own life, and I practice this relationally too, because even in other relationships, other people can get you stirred up in your mental health battlegrounds. Stir up anxiety, stir up anger, stir up depression, stir up codependency, stir up reactions, stir up stuff in you, right? And I developed this practice called watching the movie, where it's like you see someone and what they're going through. You have compassion, but you're a witness of it. You're not in the movie. You don't have to carry it for them. This unleashed a whole bit of freedom of false burden bearing, false responsibility. I felt like I saw this growing up. I saw this in my teenage years. I saw this in young adult in ministry and pastoring. I always felt like I had to do something and be better and fix this and do this, carrying the weight. And the more and more I've learned to grow, it's just, no, I don't have to react to this right now. I've become less reactive, and now am able to act out of compassion. Big difference. Most people in their mental health journey, they react out of disturbance than they do acting out of love. And the natural question people ask is, how do I know the difference? How do I know the difference, right? They need a list of rules. How do I know the difference reacting in love versus just reacting in disturbance? And when I show them what it's like living in love, it almost seems too good to be true and foreign. Because love isn't compulsive, love isn't in a hurry, and love doesn't have to react to everything that happens. Love allows you to slow down and gain some wisdom. and slowly take steps in your life and in your journey. Love has slowed me down. It's taken a while, but it slowed me down and tuned me into the rhythm of relationship versus hurried, disturbing, compulsive, reactive, kind of panic kind of ways that a lot of people live in, I myself included. And helped me to get free from, my job is not to fix people, but to love them. Now, in loving relationship, is there times to confront? Yes. Is there times to convict? Yes. Is there times to exhort? Yes. Yes, of course. But we get lost in trying to find the rules of all those metrics instead of first going, let me be a compassionate witness. Let me just, before I react, before I do anything, let me let love have its work. I remember years ago, even when I was involved in helping in some church drama and things I was helping with and stuff, and I get all knotted up over situations. I see all the unhealth, I get knotted over a person or thing. And I remember my wife one time just saying to me, Mark, just reset yourself back to just compassion. Just reset yourself. Like, what does it look like to just see the situation with love? And she was right. I needed to take a deep breath and go, I'm seeing this through a whole bunch of other filters. God reset me back to love. You love me. I love myself. Okay, let's reset this. And what this does, it makes room for grace. Now, I'm doing a whole series on grace. I'm going to continue this year on more resources on the subject of grace. I could go on and on and on. I talk about grace, and it's God's empowerment working in and through our hearts as a work of Jesus Christ. I'll get more into that there, but I'm going to kind of keep this simple. A compassionate witness of grace, it's a focusing on God's power, right? And so in that, though, grace is relational. So 3 things here in grace. The focus is relationship, journey, and God's empowerment. So as I tune into grace, it's more about what he's doing versus me striving all the time. How many of you are just exhausted in your striving, trying to make it happen? You're putting pressure on yourself. You're putting law on yourself. You're living under a weight of condemnation over all your thoughts. You have shame, you have guilt, you have regret, you have accusation hitting you. When grace comes in, God says, let's take a journey, let's walk. Because what Jesus Christ did paid a price that now we are learning to take in, and we're on a journey now walking with him, learning, healing, and growing in it. He's not accusing you all day. He's not yelling at you all day. He doesn't have a megaphone pointing out a list of all the sins. So when I live in grace now, I start letting go of all these things I think need to be done and I'm fussing. And I now tune into focusing on what God is doing. And what God is doing today is usually like one thing that I need to focus on. Well, how do I find that, Mark? How do I discover that? Well, tune into compassion, what I just taught you about. Learn to be a witness versus getting lost in everything that's going on and entangled in your thoughts and entangled in everyone else's thoughts and entangled with what's going on in the world. It's like learn to step back, see it separated, see it for what it is in compassion, and then grace shows up and God says, this is what I'm doing. Because for many of you, what grace is saying is slow down, kindness, patience, learning to be loving towards yourself, the Father's love, taking pressure off, changing yokes. For many of you, I just pointed out a large percentage of what God actually is doing. When we step out of grace, we start fussing over all these details, and then we fuss over what we think God may not be doing right now. In other words, like disappointment, all the things that didn't happen, right? And grace is saying, now is the time, here's the day, here's what's in front of you. Step into it. So what grace does is no matter what situation I'm in, no matter what situation you're in, and I own this as an influencing thought in my life, no matter where I am, no matter how I feel, grace is there to help me take the next step. No matter what prison, no matter what kind of chains, no matter what kind, you're feeling your back against the wall, there is grace to take, not leaps and bounds, just the next step. Because that's all we need to do each day is just take that next step. Now, it's very difficult for me to see the grace if I'm not connected to compassion, if I'm connected to hate, if I'm connected to fear, if I'm connected to those voices that seek to block out compassion. I'm gonna get lost. I won't see anything God's doing. I'll forget it. Depression will increase. Despair will increase. When I tune into that grace, out of the compassion that he has for me, that God sees me, he's with me, and I untangle from drowning in all the thoughts I'm in. I just witness, okay, I'm observing and noticing. Here's what's going on. I'm getting my bearings. What's God doing? Okay, I'm going to focus on that. I'm taking the next step, one step at a time, and you see God begin to empower your life. I'm praying that this will be a year. This will be a season where new empowerment will happen in your life. Is this video a blessing to you? If it is, please click that like button, hit the subscribe button, go over to markdejesus.com where I have all kinds of topics and resources and books, materials. I also have a healing and freedom community that you can jump into if you want to invest in a next level of course material and resources for your life and for your journey, interactive Q&As and all kinds of stuff that I have offered there. If you'd like to support these videos, just click the donate button and you can give an amount of any kind and it's greatly appreciated. It's a privilege and an honor to be your brother from another mother, to be able to share these insights with you. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, I'll be back with more insights for your healing and freedom journey. But in the meantime, I'm out.